This episode is brought to you by RBJ Community Consulting. RBJ Community Consulting is a consulting company for community organizations and social entrepreneurs that is dedicated to helping organizations and employees reach their full potential. They provide strategic planning, meeting and event planning and facilitation, nonprofit startup services, project management, and more. To connect or learn more about their services, visit www.rbjcommunity.com.
Are you doing well? Are you doing not well? It really hasn't shown up yet, but having that validation come through, especially in a positive light, is something that is a really good feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, if you have that pop quiz and you do really well, get yourself that shake. You deserve it, So. What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Black Student Success Podcast, where we bring you insight and guidance from successful Black professionals and students. My name is Selvin. Of course, we appreciate your support. So today we have Noah Harris on the show. He is a rising senior at Harvard University. He is the first Black male student body president. So he's going to talk about his experience, what types of things that he did to get to where he's at, any obstacles that he had to overcome, just to give you a little bit of insight from his direct experience. So Noah, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time as well. So let's start things off the way we always do by asking, who is Noah Harris?
For sure. So I feel that I'm really a product of where I come from, and especially my identity. So, of course, I'm a Black man, and I'm from Southern Mississippi, Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Lived here my whole life, and I really feel that this place has shaped a lot about me, a lot of what I know, a lot of what I do. I think the South gets a lot of bad raps for a number of reasons, but it really has this identity of service and trying to build up communities. And I really feel that I've gotten my kind of thought process of trying to leave somewhere better than I found it, of really finding value and finding purpose in my life from being able to help other people that I've gotten from here. And so I think that has shaped me and in a number of ways. And then, so of course, I believe that service first. I feel that I'm a leader. I've always been interested in politics, public service, law, and just trying to lead by serving others. I think that is kind of my mantra that I live by, and I think it really defines who I am. Yep.
There you go. Appreciate that. So let's take all those things, the things that you've been interested in, where you came from, the different things that have been instilled in you. How did that shape your experience when you were looking for colleges, when you were going through that admissions process, and then what eventually led you to Harvard?
So I think for the longest of time, I always knew I probably wanted to go out of state. For a while, I was mainly focused on sports because I was really good at them: basketball, baseball. The dream was, to play professionally for a while. And I feel that I was, really good, doing really well. And the plan was to go to a really good academic school, but also a good athletic school as well. And maybe kind of, do both, make that happen. And maybe eventually become a lawyer, or if I had the opportunity to play professionally, that presented itself. And so kind of went through that and ended up getting some good offers to play basketball on the next level, but they really weren't the level of academic school that I really wanted. And so, I was also, very, pretty good academically all the way through. And my parents have always hit it home that education is so important. It's the first step to anything you want to achieve. You work hard in school, even if you really don't know where it's leading you. It really sets a precedent for what's going to come next and really sets you up for success. And so that's always something that I've known. And my mom encouraged me, hey, look to the Ivy Leagues. And as she's been in education for over 25 years. And so she, from kindergarten all the way up to college level. And so she kind of knows what those competitive applicants look like. And even though I had never met anyone or seen anyone go to an Ivy League school from my area, I still had, because of my mom, I still had, somewhat of a way to know that I was competitive. And I just kind of had to trust her there because, you think about Harvard, I'm thinking about, Bill Gates, all these people who are just, I'm not saying I'm not exceptional or anything like that, but just people who are rich, connected, wealthy, um, come from people who are just already famous or something of that nature. And so there's a sense that these schools are not for you. And so it took a bit of convincing that these schools were for me. And so we went on a trip and kind of toured Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, and ended up applying to Harvard early and getting in. So I think that was my kind of process. And for me to be, 3 years removed from getting in, being elected as the first Black man to be student body president, that's just beyond my wildest dreams, because I almost didn't apply because I just didn't think that it was, people apply to Harvard so they can frame their rejection letters. That's the level that we're talking about here. I think last admission cycle, it was under 3.7% admission. It's just, I couldn't even fathom being in that 3%. And for me to be kind of in this position is such a blessing. And so I'm really fortunate. And so I'm also trying to take that responsibility of being that person who got to be in that 3% and really trying to show everyone else that, hey, this number looks really small, but if you think about it this way, you have so many special qualities that you may not see in yourself that are a product of where you come from, who you are, and that maybe they're looking for you, but you have to give them a chance to select you. And so I'm really trying to run down from these elite, very odd, exclusive spaces and tell people that look like me in my area and around it, just that believe in yourself and realize that you are special, even if what society has deemed as something that is worth celebrating, you don't feel that you have.
Yeah, I think it's really notable that you have that status, or just the idea of being a Harvard student, and you're able to bring that back to Mississippi, just as you mentioned, and be able to show what you didn't see, even though you still had the advantage of your mom kind of being in the education system and kind of getting an idea that way. You can basically claim that story that, you didn't have that person that you saw to really emulate, but you had the idea and you trusted that process. And now you can actually be that person to be present and say that, hey, this is what it looked like. You can be a part of that 3%. As daunting as that percentage sounds, you can still do it. So I think that's really good to know. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now, when it comes to the major, once you actually got in, or as you were applying, why did you choose the major that you did?
So I'm majoring in government. It's a very weird kind of way to say political science, international relations, public policy, all rolled into one, but call it government. I guess it's maybe more efficient that way, but it's an interesting major. I kind of was the type of person that has seen myself in law school since I was in 6th, 7th grade. We had, job shadowing, all of this stuff. I've seen the racial injustices that happened here, the voter suppression, and really just kind of knowing deeply early on that is something that got me not necessarily excited, but kind of invigorated to really want to be a part of changing those things and being there for people. And so I think that's something that I always knew. Okay, so there is no, well, I won't say there is no law major, but at, a majority of schools, you can't major in law or criminal justice. You have to do something like political science. And luckily enough, I was very interested in political science. But of course, now I realize that to go to law school, you don't have to major in anything particular. But I was just very interested in political science, studying all of those things, what makes things work, because I really feel that it is wrapped around every single fabric of our being. And so there's no way you're not political. So there's something that kind of just wraps through everything. And I'm very passionate about that. So of course, government at Harvard was the thing for me. They of course have the Kennedy School of Government. I think they were one of the first kind of to bring government in this very explicit way into the academics and outside of merely like an MPP, and making an entire school around government, particularly in politics. I don't think that had happened before, but I think it's a really cool thing to be a part of that at the Institute of Politics. And so I just think it's a very cool opportunity, and one that I didn't really even know existed, because when I was applying, if I would have told you, I was just say, oh, I'm going to study political science. But I didn't know that there was this deeply rooted historical, just kind of mecca of public service and government over here. We're in Cambridge.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to point out, that you normally just hear political science, right? And
Right.
so it's good to know that you have these different aspects of the major that you're in that can apply to basically, like you said, all different facets of your life in that sense, and how you operate and how you move around and how you make decisions and things of that nature. So it's good to know that there are programs that do kind of expand on that, at least that idea of political science, and then puts more information to that. So so I'm sure there was a blessing to kind of find that and then be able to really utilize that.
Right. It also doesn't hurt that the Institute of Politics at Harvard is where all the famous speakers come to speak, and so being plugged in there doesn't hurt.
Perfect. Nice. So now, when it comes to the idea of being a Black student at Harvard, or just in the in one of the Ivy League schools in general, what is that experience like, and what ways do you find support if needed?
It's not an easy experience, and it's something that, coming from Mississippi, I have a preconceived thought process that Black people are this way, or people of color are this way. And then, you go to Harvard, and people of color expands to people from all over the globe, Black people who are 6 generations very wealthy. My definition of Black, quote unquote Black, has changed, where you have Harvard's Black population, although it's 15% of the school population, that also includes and is a majority first generation African students. So people from Ghana, people whose parents are from Nigeria, Jamaica, the Caribbean. And so it's just we've created this new term called generational African Americans, students with, history ties to slavery. But when I'm coming from Mississippi, that's the only thing I've known as quote unquote Black. And so I think it expands your worldview. It expands your sense of privilege as well. And it's just a very interesting dynamic, and one that I'm glad that I've experienced, because it really changes how I think about certain things. But when it goes to support, there are certainly small communities that you can build, and you can find your place in a community. But it's just very difficult, because with extreme levels of diversity also comes very few amounts of people from certain different backgrounds. And so Mississippi it's an entire state, only gets around 4 or 5 acceptances from Harvard every year. Whereas you have schools in New York, Massachusetts, who will get 10 people accepted per school. And so it's just a very much kind of a lack of representation for what I knew as normal before. And so it's just very hard to kind of get support in that. So it's really just important for you to find small pockets of support where you can find it, because it just doesn't exist in the way you can't confide in every single person can kind of know your situation. And so it does kind of require a sense of kind of being a self-starter. Definitely, I'm a very religious person, so relying on God and praying and calling your family and telling them what's going on and relaying that kind of experience, because I didn't know what to expect. I will say what I experienced was not what I thought I would experience. I mean, when you think about Harvard, I just thought everyone was going to be rich and I was just going to be really out of place and everybody was going to be wearing, suits to class or something like in the law school movies or, so I just didn't know what to expect. And of course, I got something that was a lot more normal than the very crazy stratified thought process that I had, but it was still very different, of course, from what I experienced at home and really anywhere else. The level of wealth, the expectation to be just very, very knowledgeable about, certain academic backgrounds. And so there was a big transition process, I'll say. And I think anyone coming into this space who hasn't come from the prep school, prestigious background, kind of affluent community, give yourself grace to kind of, trip up a little bit and kind of figure it out for the first few months.
Nice. That's a good point to make as far as giving yourself that room to kind of grow and find wherever your place is, because just like anyone who's kind of going to a new school, whether it's in state, out of state, no matter how different it is from what they're normally used to, there might be some aspects, just like you, where you didn't expect to actually see, and giving yourself that room to be able to adjust to that, because you're still learning from a new place, no matter what your initial perception of it is before you even get there. So I think that's a really good point to make as far as giving yourself that time, whatever it is, a semester, or whatever the case is, to be able to adjust and then be able to grow after that. And then the other point that you made, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and one thing I'll add, and I usually try to put it into perspective like this, it would have been hard enough for me to just kind of go and start taking college classes. I think that is a big jump in itself, going from a public school in Mississippi to a large research university. But when that large research university comes with the perception of Harvard and it changing your entire worldview just by walking onto the campus, it's just a lot. And so you really just have to put that in perspective, think about those two very difficult things converging at once. And so I think that kind of helps me and kind of show how much of a transition that was as I reflect on it.
Yeah. It's a lot to get ready for. But I think as long as you know that you're getting ready for something that might be a little difficult to adjust to, whether that is the fact that you're now taking these college level classes, or if it's the fact that you're going somewhere where the population, the Black population might not be as high. And so in that case, trying to find your place within that, 15%, like you said, that you can relate to, or find those different ways that you can relate to people. I think that having those things in mind before you get there, I think, is probably the best approach that you can have. And not even just for Harvard, but just for anywhere that you go, because there will be, whatever challenge that you might be facing based off of the unknown. So I'm glad that you stuck with it, and really kept pushing forward. Perfect. So now, with all of those experiences that you have, especially being a senior coming up and having, full 3 years to experience Harvard, plus everything that led up to that, as you were growing up in Mississippi, what advice would you have for any high schooler who's looking to pursue college, no matter where that's at?
So I think this is just a really big thing in general when you're going to a different space, but especially an elite space, or really just any new environment, because I would say most people probably don't go to college in the exact same places where they grew up. Maybe it's a little different, even if it's 10 miles east of where you are, that can be a change. And so I would say, as you wrap up high school and as you're applying to these colleges, really take the time to reflect on who you are and get a sense of your identity and really ground yourself in that. Think about what are your values that are non-negotiable and that you won't compromise, that are not on the table. Who are you? Think about who you are, because that will really prepare you for a situation where you might feel pressures to assimilate, or you might feel the need to change who you are to impress other people. So I would say that, and I think that's something that we really don't have to do enough of, especially when you spend your whole life in the exact same place. You're just like, who am I? I'm me, But think about, who are you? What makes you who you are? And then that'll really give you the peace of mind to know who you are and really check yourself against pressures of assimilation that come from any new environment, and especially one in higher education.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, especially for the fact that especially if you're going to a place where there are, like a large school where you've got thousands of students who all have these different backgrounds coming into a place that has its own culture itself. And, it's going to take in whoever is really ready to make those changes. And those could be for the good or for the worse if, you're not aware of kind of where you stand. So I like the fact of that you mentioned, just staying grounded in yourself and really understanding where you are as a person before you do go into a place that, can be drastically different, have all those different influences. So, was that something that you felt like you did or had to kind of figure out once you got there?
And I also think I think it's on a continuum. So I don't think I'll say that, I just didn't ever do this. I think I did do it to a small degree, but I don't think I did it enough and as explicitly as I probably should have. And so I think I of course had I had my non-negotiables, like who I am, my faith, this and that whatsoever. But there was a small period of time where I'm thinking, like there's this pressure on me coming from where I am. Nobody's ever been here, to be a Harvard student and to maybe take these classes or join this or hang out with these people. And so I think it's not necessarily, when I say pressure to assimilate, it's not always a huge thing, but there are a lot of little things that will start to build up. And then over the course of time, you'll kind of say, what is this? Am I staying true to myself, or am I letting this place affect me? And I think, of course, a lot of that is staying close to people who know you for who you are, and not just, knowing you in the space that you are currently in. And so I think it's a lot of, reflection, a lot of constant push and pull. I don't think it's as easy as, maybe I oversimplified it. I don't think it's as easy as necessarily, I know who I am, I'm good. There are little things here and there that will kind of make you think about, okay, would I have done this if I were going to school in Mississippi or something, And so I think you just have to always be thinking about it, check up on yourself mentally every now and then, and make sure that you like where you're going.
Yeah, great way to sum all of that up. Thank you for that. So now finally, just to get a better idea of you and your experience as a college student, what rite of passage do you think that all students should go through, as a college student, or building up to that point? What experience do you think everybody should kind of go through to, all right, you're a college student. What do you think that would be?
I think there's just, and I've seen this a lot of times, I think there's just something about that first semester and kind of proving to yourself, both academically, culturally, socially, that you can do this. And I mean, you don't necessarily need the validation, but getting to the end of that semester and looking back and said, okay, that was a little rough in parts, but I'm here, I'm good. And just being able to have that first little milestone under your belt. You took those first finals, those first exams, and you did pretty well. You see where you can improve. You have this friend group you didn't have before. You see some of the connections you made paying off. And I think there's just something about getting through that first semester and being able to reflect and really kind of start mapping out the rest. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, yeah, and also giving yourself time to celebrate whatever wins that you had.
Right.
Especially if if you feel like you had a really difficult semester and there was that one thing that you made sure that you got right, or that one lesson from that one class that was always getting you throughout the entire semester, but that you got that answer right on the exam, or you really pulled that point through on a paper. Go out and and celebrate that. I think it's really important to make sure that you're doing that as well.
Right. Definitely a lot of little wins in college, and even ones that maybe you don't see at first. And sometimes they come in the last 5 minutes of an exam, and you're just thinking, and you make a point that, maybe 5 months before that, you're not able to articulate as well. And you just kind of rise to a moment. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something really powerful about that. And when you see some of the hard work you've been doing, starting to pay off, because I think in high school, there's a lot more validation with your academics, especially because you have probably at least some grade every week. But in college, when on that course syllabus, you see only 4 different things that you're graded on, maybe if you don't include participation or something, only 4 different opportunities to prove yourself in this class. I think that's very intimidating, very scary at first, especially because you don't really know how you're doing, in the class. Are you doing well? Are you doing not well? It really hasn't shown up yet, but having that validation come through, especially in a positive light, is something that is a really good feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, if you have that pop quiz and you do really well, get yourself that shake. You deserve it, So Noah, that's all I got for you, man. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your experience. Now, any last words for our audience before we wrap up?
Well, I would just say, and this is kind of something that I've kind of realized specifically with the position that I hold now as the complete title first Black man to be student body president at Harvard. And I think anybody that's been the first to do anything had to first kind of sit there with themselves and say, okay, I don't have a blueprint, but I'm going to do this anyway. And so what I'll say to anybody in education, higher education, at any level, just dare to be the first in your family to do it, first in your community to do it, first in the school's history to do it. But if there is no blueprint, you do it and you become the blueprint. And so I think that's something that I see that I did do at some point. I don't think it was as necessarily as explicit, but there was a moment where I said, okay, there's really not, a playbook right now, but let me do this anyway. Let me dare to be the first. So I think that's something that I want to leave everyone with.
Absolutely. That's very, very powerful in itself. So again, thanks for your time and sharing everything. Thanks to everybody who was watching and listening. Be sure to continue to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. That's at Inquire Higher. And then check our website out, inquirehigher.com. We got a lot of great information there. So until next time, peace.